This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm very grateful for the fact that you support me, support the channel, and support my family in the process. So thank you very much for all of your help. I'm very grateful to you. Please don't stop. Listen, earlier this week I had an opportunity to sit down in a kind of a roundtable discussion with Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association and with Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California. We talked in detail about the upcoming recall of Gavin Newsome. Gavin Newsome, in case you want to know his real name. In any case, he's the governor of California. We're trying to recall him, and if we do, then we get rid of a horrible governor and we can replace him with somebody else. Now that conversation got very interesting in some spots, and I think if you're in California, it's a key thing for you to watch, because there's a lot of shenanigans going on you want to be aware of. And then if you're outside of California, it's a great interview for you to watch, because it's important for you to know what happens in these blue states where the anti-gun, anti-American, anti-freedom left pulls shenanigans in elections on a regular basis. It's very, very important that in your state, if you're in a red state, you pass election integrity laws that will prevent them from doing a lot of this stuff. Here in California, there's not much chance of us doing that, since the legislature has a 2/3 veto-proof majority in both houses of our legislature here in the state. That doesn't mean that a new governor couldn't do a lot. We'll talk about that more in the interview and in the discussion, so you'll learn about what the governor can do if we replace Gavin Newsome with a real governor who will actually govern. With that in mind, I do urge you to stay all the way through the video, because at the end of the video, that's where you're going to learn what CRPA and Gun Owners of California's pick is for the new governor should we manage to recall Newsome, which frankly, if we all show up at the polls and we vote appropriately, and you'll learn a lot about that, then we'll get rid of Newsome and we'll be able to elect somebody else. So stick around to the end for their recommendation and mine as to who to elect once we've gotten rid of Gavin Newsome. And then at the same time, if you stick to the end, I'll tell you where I'm hiking, because I know you want to know. If you're in the San Diego area, there are some great places to hike. I hike a lot, and I'll tell you about this one too. But in the meantime, I've got about 4 miles left to go on this hike, so I'm going to work on that while you're watching the video. A couple of stories that were in the news before we get started, then I'll shut up and let you guys go. I couldn't help but notice the story. This is in the LA Times. Torrance police find more than 300 recall ballots in suspect's car, along with a gun and drugs. That happened the other day. Here, for your perusal, are pictures of the ballots. These were, by the way, unfilled out ballots. These were just regular ballots ready for somebody to fill out and stuff the ballot box with. It looks like they're already trying to cheat. Here's another one. I thought this was kind of surprising. Former California Democratic Senate leader Gloria Romero is backing Larry Elder. In fact, I read a quote by her that she said, "This is not about party, it is about Newsome." You gotta love that. And then apparently Joe Biden feels that he's so incredibly popular right now and so loved by the nation that he's going to save Gavin Newsome by coming to stump for him. I think that's probably the death of anybody's campaign right now, to have Slow Joe, China Joe, let's just call him what it is, Afghanistan Surrender Joe, show up and try to get you elected. All right, now with that, what's going on, gentlemen, with the California recall? You want to start, buddy?
Yeah, I'll go start. So, growing up in a postal family, I find the Torrance story very interesting, because my family has pretty much been in law enforcement and the Postal Service. So start off with the Postal Service, for the most part, is acting as the polling station for everybody in this recall election, because ballots are coming to your home via the post office, being picked up via the post office, and sorted and sent to your local county voter registration office to be counted and sorted depending on the county's particular rules. And I'm sure we'll get into the ballots and the differences in the ballots in different counties, but This is one where the security of the ballots is in question. One or two getting dropped, picked up by the wind. It shouldn't happen, but it could. 300 neatly packaged ballots from the city of Lawndale, because that's where the residents were from, ending up in a felon's car while he's at a 7-Eleven, who there evidently were warrants for, according to the story, and he had a gun, which, as Sam and I are always talking about, that's highly illegal, shouldn't have that. And he had drugs, which is another add-on to the offense, and the list goes on. And yet he was let go on his own recognizance within a couple of hours of the arrest. And everybody said, no harm, no foul. And the Postal Inspection Service said, yeah, we'll look into it. The county said, yeah, you can check the status of your ballot here online. And, we'll send out new ballots to those people. At the very least, not looking at conspiracy theories or anything, everybody has a right, regardless of politics, to sit there and go, how safe and secure is our vote? And I'm sure as we get deeper in this discussion, it's like someone choreographed multiple ways to discount this election.
Rick, according to those pictures, it looked like they were ballots that were taken out of the envelope. So there's supposed to be no indicator on the ballot itself as to who they were sent to. So how is the county registrar's office going to send ballots out if they don't know who they came from? Now you have the probability that you're going to have even more ballots out there floating around, because there's no way for them to tell whose ballots were taken. They could spend $1 million or so in an ad campaign to find out, to let people know, hey, if you haven't received your ballot by now, you should have, and give us a call and we'll send you one or something like that. But they're not going to do that. They're going to just continue to send out these ballots at will. Voting is the single most sacred thing we can do in this country. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, Senator Richardson always said that, we really don't have the authority to rebel until they take away our right to vote. Once they do that, up until that time, we have the responsibility to figure out how we organize to get people to move like we believe, in association with our thoughts and our beliefs, and to fight for that. And that means it takes work. But when they take away your franchise to vote, you're talking anarchy, you're talking monarchy. Our votes have been taken away from us, and at that point, it is tyranny. Because if your vote doesn't count for anything because you never get to vote, it's tyranny, and you're not electing representatives. We are a Republican form of government where we elect our representatives and send them to the city council, or we send them to the board of supervisors, the legislature, and the Congress. And they take away that ability. And this is a very scary scenario. How in the world did this guy come up with over 300 ballots? Was he stealing ballots out of mailboxes? Or that's a lot of mailboxes to rob, especially in the short time since the ballots were put out.
So here's another question, Sam, and I don't want to be hyperbolic here. I try not to do that, but this is extraordinarily frustrating. Is this just the tip of the iceberg? This one guy 100%. With 300 ballots. I mean, how many more are out there floating around?
So this isn't rumor or fear mongering or conspiracy theory. That is an absolutely appropriate question to ask. How many more? This guy was just dumb enough to get caught, and if the left was dumb enough to use a criminal, a drug addict to do their deed, that's one thing. But who knows? This could be the very tip of the iceberg. I think we're finding out from the audits in Arizona. I believe there were several 100,000 more votes cast than there were ballots issued. That's a problem. And that should be raising eyebrows. Not a whole lot of people are understanding that, because that would justify the argument that there might have been some shenanigans in the election, and some of the beliefs in theft of an election might just be true. And that's why I don't think we're hearing much in the form of a news story on that. But yeah, this is a very scary situation we're in right now.
I agree. I think the other thing that bothers me, Rick, is that when this stuff happens, stuff like this happens, people say, well, why should I vote? Because they're just going to steal the election anyway. And one of my concerns is that this stuff hits the news and we find out about this kind of possible cheating, and folks who would like to see Gavin Newsome thrown out of office stay home. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I have a couple on those. One of the things I wanted to touch base on that Sam had said, because it's a really good point, but we've got to be a little careful, and that is, you know, the Postal Service actually bundles a lot of those things. And so when I look at those pictures, it looks very familiar to what I saw when my dad was running one of the post offices here in Southern California. And that was, it does look like bundled pieces of mail, which then you have to beg the question of how do you get somebody to get in as a felon into the back of a post office or in a postal vehicle to get it, which means the security of those ballots, which does go along with what Sam is saying, is in jeopardy. And regardless to which way the people vote, that in of itself is bad. But then we can also go to, you know, and Sam and I have been talking about this, and we've talked about it, Joel, that we have ballot envelopes. Some have holes in them that you can see how you voted, and others don't, which suggests of, oh, well, if I'm a person that works in a union and I'm anti anybody that is running against the governor, I would know that you voted yes, and those ballots might not get counted. And then, you know, you couple on what Sam was saying about Arizona. Part of it wasn't just the vote, the number of ballots, but it's a problem that exists here in California. Talking with former ambassador to Germany, Rick Grinnell, he was explaining to me how in apartment complexes here in California, a lot of those voter rolls haven't been updated. And what he meant by that was, yeah, they might have, if Sam's a current apartment owner, they may have Sam on there, but they also have you, Joel, who lived there 3 years ago. Me that lived there 5 years ago, and 12 other people lived in between all of us. And so Sam gets 19 different ballots at that place. If he's honest, he fills out one. If he's not, there's 18 votes that didn't come from anybody but Sam. And while Sam's a patriotic guy, and I love him as a brother, he doesn't get to vote 17 times more than I do. Like that's part of the fairness thing in it. But, you know, I'll throw back something that came up. You know, the far left has basically built a shrine to a political theorist, Saul Alinsky. You know, everybody from the Clintons to Obama and a lot of other people on the far left have stayed under him. And one of the things I wanted to have on this show was a quote of his that says, "Accuse your opponent of what you're doing to create confusion and to inculcate voters against evidence of your own guilt." And I think we're seeing a lot of that where the far left is playing all sorts of games and they're accusing the far right of doing that when they're not. That has been proven, but that has caused that very attitude of what's the point in me voting? Folks, that's what Saul Alinsky's theory is designed to do, to create apathy so you'll not show up because that's a vote for them. So when you don't show up, you're actually voting for the other guy.
So what's your message?
Vote. Get out and vote. And by the way, you don't have to get out. You have to fill out your ballot. And I'll point out, there's a lot of shenanigans going on. I don't know how much of it's going on in Northern California. I'll let Sam handle that. But here in Southern California, we've had several groups, a couple that we've kind of been able to trace where the money has supposedly came from. But here's what they're doing. They're giving away T-shirts. And they ask people like yourself, Joel, are you against Newsome? Yeah, so then no on Newsome. Here's a free T-shirt, hoping you'll wear it. But a no vote on question 1 is keep Newsome in. And they're trying to confuse the voters because what you want to vote on question 1 is yes, remove Governor Newsome from office.
Okay, so I've got my ballot in my hand. I'm going to fill it out today. Let me read the question. This is question 1. Shall Gavin Newsome be recalled, removed, in parentheses, from the office of governor? Well, if you don't want Newsome in, then the answer to that question would be yes, Gavin Newsome should be recalled or removed.
Correct.
That's Rick's point, is they're passing out these no on Newsome shirts, hoping that you won't bother to read the question. The question, I'll read it again. Shall Gavin Newsome be recalled from the office of governor? If you want Gavin Newsome to go away, the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Okay, so there you go. So I thought I have my ballot for that reason. There you go. I will vote later today.
Joel, what we have to do in direct answer to your question as to what we need to do is we need to encourage everybody. Absolutely. It doesn't matter who you want as the replacement for governor. Arm wrestle about it later on, but for right now, everybody has to vote yes. Typically, you can't steal elections except on the margins when things are pretty close. The level of shenanigans that's going on right now indicates to me that the divide is growing, is wide and getting wider. I don't think that Governor Newsome would be as vitriolic, pounding on the desk 53 times in response to a reporter's question, criticizing people who are critical about California and what's going on here, defending his record, and not addressing any of the scandals and problems that he has, like his fire prevention scandal, his EDD scandal, where over $1 billion in fraud claims went, with millions of dollars going to people in prison. The French balcony
French Laundry
restaurant, that situation, how it's good for it's not necessarily for me, but for thee, yes. And it's we just have to encourage everybody. Things have got to change. A one-legged pink goose with 3 eyes would be a better governor than Gavin Newsome. And there's no question that if a Republican is elected, and it doesn't matter which Republican is elected, the same would be true. The legislature is controlled by a supermajority of radical liberals. The moderates in there aren't sufficient in number to overcome the power of the leadership. So many vetoes that the governor would have would be overridden by the legislature. But the governor has the ability to appoint thousands upon thousands of directors and deputy directors and secretaries and assistant secretaries to agencies of government. And many of them require Senate approval, but he can appoint them for 1 year without approval. Then if they don't get approval, then he has to appoint somebody else. So appoint good people and keep them there for 1 year. And if the Senate doesn't play and doesn't approve any of his appointees, let him go and appoint somebody else. And by controlling the administration, imagine if we had a real, honest to goodness, resource-minded, conservation-minded individual at Secretary of Natural Resources, Fish and Game Director, or Fish and Wildlife Director. If we had somebody who was not beholden to Gavin Newsome as the Commissioner of the Highway Patrol, or on and on and on, of EDD, of the Department of Corrections, if you had good people running those agencies, things would be immensely different. And he can do it for 1 year without needing the legislature to make approvals on his nomination. So a lot of good can happen. Yes, absolutely. And that's the dream part of what's going on here. The reality part is that we have to vote yes on question 1 to begin the ball of making change. So that would be our message. That's what we're doing.
Well, so let's say that Gavin Newsome is removed. I hope, praise God, hallelujah, everybody vote yes on question 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have potentially a more conservative governor. I'm going to use Larry Elder as an example because he's the one that seems to have the most juice at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Larry Elder as governor, or any conservative governor, is going to have a tough time because the legislature is against him and they've got a 2/3 majority, and anything he vetoes, they can go back perhaps and override the veto. And you've mentioned some of the things that governor might do. I bring up Larry Elder because the other day I saw him speaking about this, and he said that there were a few things he felt he could do, and he listed among them some emergency declarations of state of emergency with regard to the water issue, declarations of a state of emergency with regard to the homeless issue, and so on. If a governor were to do that, does that give them additional powers that they would not have to rely upon the legislature to accomplish some of the goals he wanted to accomplish?
Yes, when a governor declares a state of emergency on a particular issue, it basically takes the legislature out of the quotient. They get enhanced powers to spend money and direct resources on that issue. That's why this governor has never removed his declaration of emergency on the COVID situation, because he knows that if he did, then the legislature would have something to say about it. But right now, in reality, the legislature is part of the peanut gallery, watching what's happening from the outside and not having the kind of influence that they want to have. There's another power that the governor has. He has the power of the blue pencil. And with a blue pencil, once the budget is passed, he can go through and do line item vetoes of expenditures. And that's not something that the legislature can overturn. All they can do is bring it back up in the next budget. If that happens, we could save billions of dollars in expenditures that the legislature had passed. And just like during the Trump administration, the media hated the president, but they still had to cover him because there was no other game in town, or they'd lose their seats in the White House press corps, and they didn't. That would be like kidnapping their favorite child or something like that. The bully pulpit would give the governor an opportunity to give a clear message out there on a variety of issues, and would give more, particular independents, more of a reason to stop voting knee-jerk Democrat. And I think that could bolster the Republican side on registration. But I think that there are also a lot of Democrats who would be listening to this message that is being put out there and would say, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. We need to at least vote that way. Remember, California hasn't had a majority of Republicans in forever. And still they elected Republican governor after Republican governor because the ideas and the thoughts they had made sense. So the bully pulpit would give a Republican governor opportunity to speak truth, speak common sense, logic, virtue, and tell the truth about what's going on in government. And if you do that, that would go a long way towards swinging the pendulum from the far radical left, where it is right now, back towards the middle, and hopefully to our side one time in the future.
I know we're getting a lot of calls. I'm sure Sam is too, about, well, what can I say to my neighbors who may not be involved with the 2A movement or firearms, or the different types of laws that go with them, may not be their voting thing. And I keep going up. I did this morning, I said to a group, I said, well, are you happy with gun price, or not gun prices, gas prices? No. Then vote yes on question 1. Are you happy with the shortage of shortages, because they're everywhere? And they're like, no. Then vote yes. Fire management. Like, there's a long list, and Sam alluded to that earlier in the conversation, but I have yet to find anybody, when I start to go down that list, they're like, you know, you're right, I should vote yes on question 1, because there's usually 2 or 3 of those things that are deeply meaningful to the average Californian.
Again, Rick, you did it again. Confrontational politics. One of the key things there is called hot button issues. Hot button issues. Oftentimes when we endorse a candidate that we know to be 2A, sometimes we know from survey information that the Second Amendment isn't a critical issue in that district. That maybe it's education, maybe it's COVID, maybe it's unemployment, maybe it's the homeless, maybe it's schools or something like that. And we want the candidates to talk about the issues that are going to get them elected, those hot button issues that resonate with the people and will move them to action. Some of them, it's the Second Amendment. A lot of them, it isn't the Second Amendment. So that translates to individual voters too, our friends, our family members. Do we talk to them and say, well, what do you think about inflation? They say, well, I watched the news and they said there is no inflation. Well, have you noticed that the groceries have gone up 30%? The gasoline is now, in some places in LA, $5 a gallon. What about the homeless situation? Well, the governor said he was going to, address that. Well, have you driven down 101 or I-5 lately and seen the homeless camps all the way up and down the highways? Has he addressed it? No. What about the fact that the governor doesn't think he needs to wear a mask when he goes to a $300+ dinner with some friends and lobbyists, and he makes you go down to Jack in the Box and wear a mask until you start eating? What do you think about that? And so you have to engage people. You have to talk to people and find out what it is that is their hot button, and then just give them the truth with regards to that hot button issue. Schools, what do you think about having to keep your kids at home for so long, away from school, doing education on Zoom? And thank God for Zoom. It's been a blessing, and it gives us the opportunity to do this. But, having your kids wear masks at school. We have records of kids getting ill, passing out, and even dying because they've had to wear masks in school. So find out what that hot button issue is, which means that we have to be engaged with people. Now, typical for gun owners and hunters, and in absolute particular, we like to be our own person, and don't bother me with people. This world will be a great place, and not for the people. But in politics, when you're trying to do a grassroots movement and share information, it means that you have to engage with people. Yep. So if somebody's wearing a T-shirt that you see standing in line at the grocery store or the gas station, and it's something that obviously points out to a hot button they have, talk to them about it. Mention something about it so that they feel they're not alone. They obviously feel they have to express themselves somehow. So pay them off by saying, hey, like your T-shirt, I agree 100%. We got a recall election coming up, and this issue is directly affected by what happens in that recall. Are you going to vote? And encourage them.
You were going to say something. By the way, before you say something, I want you, if you're watching this, and I don't know how it'll display, so I don't know if Rick's display was there when Sam was speaking, but Rick stifled a huge yawn, and Sam's phone is ringing off the hook. These guys are working themselves into the ground on this thing. They're not getting any sleep. Sam is only 23 years old, and look at him. This is what this has done to the guy.
I'm 18.
So I do want you to know, if you're a gun owner, these guys are working their tails off. I know them both personally. They are working their tails off, and that's why Rick is yawning all over the place. It's not because he's disrespectful. It's just because the last time he slept was Thursday of last week or whatever. All right, anyway, Rick, what were you going to say?
I think it's really important that everybody starts to also realize you got to encourage your friends. And, there's too often I'm talking to people and I'm seeing them saying, oh, well, yeah, because, all of us have mouthy friends. I got a bunch of friends that are mouthy and love to hang out and say, oh, I'm going to do this, rah, 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 rah. And then, something to get passed. And, one of the things I'll say for Sam and Gunners of California, working with CRPA and the NRA and a few others, this has been, despite us being outnumbered, 23 of the 26 bills are dead for the year against us. Another one looks like it's about to get the nails put in it. The last two, we're still fighting them, and we're prepared to, if they did get passed and did get signed by the governor, to litigate them. So we are working around the clock on this, but we get those people that call us or come up to us and are like, why did you let this happen? And I go, did you vote? And they didn't. And I've actually had some people, well, no one reminded me. So, okay, to those of you that have never been reminded, I'm asking all of you that are listening to this, go remind your friends to vote. And if you live in another state, you have friends in California, Call them up, tell them to go vote. Make sure they show you they're voting. Humiliate them. I'd rather humiliate someone into voting than let them get off the hook. Because Sam and I have talked about this. A lot of these elections are not landslides. You know, you look at the aftermath of, because I'm just one of those numbers guys, and I get made fun of in the group that Sam was talking about sometimes, but I love to look at the colors of maps and precincts. And I will tell you, back in 2016, I took it on myself because I believe that a lot of people vote because they're misinformed. And so I picked an area. My great-grandfather lived in Inglewood. And at the time, Inglewood was a mixed racial neighborhood. It's not so much now. And I went in, and a lot of people were like, oh, well, it's lower income. No, it's not. There's parts of Inglewood that have people that are African-American who make fantastic money. And I walked into one of the precincts with four friends of mine, and we did not go say, hey, go vote for Donald Trump. We didn't say vote for anything. Here was our message. Do you realize you can vote for whoever you want to, and the union doesn't know? And the first weekend we did that, we got told, no, the union would know. And then we brought back sample ballots and showed them how it was physically impossible for the union to know. That's all we did for 5 weeks. That was the only non-completely Democratic precinct in Inglewood. It actually flipped for Trump in an area it shouldn't. And my point that I made to our board and to some other people in politics was, there are people that are being misled that their company, their business, their church, whatever that institution is, will know exactly what they're doing. When the fact is, that's one of the beauties of the United States, is no one's supposed to know how you vote. That's between you and the ballot, period. And I really want to get that message across, because often when I talk to people, the reason they're apathetic is either what you said at the beginning of the show, Joe, like what's the point? Or if I vote the way I want to vote, I could lose my job, or I could lose this, right? And that's just, it's horse bucking. And so I want to make sure people realize, tell your friends, that's not true. It's absolutely patently false, you know, and go vote your conscience, because it was obvious in that case, a lot of people believe something different than the way they would have traditionally voted by looking at the election before and after. That precinct was the opposite color than it was in that year.
Well said. Well said, Rick.
And then the other thing I would say too is, when the paper's printed, they'll print like it's either red or blue. But yeah, I know we joke about purple being when you mix those two colors together, but a lot of those, quote, red or blue, doesn't matter which side it's on, is often 1.5%. And in some counties, that is literally, I would have to convince one person in every other tract of homes to vote the opposite direction, and the entire color changes. And so this attitude that every county, you know, like when San Bernardino one time flipped colors, they're like, oh, we lost it. No, you didn't. You're talking was a handful of votes. Flip them the other way, and the color goes the other way.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, just get off your butt, go out and talk to one or two people in your neighborhood and convince them to vote. That's it. It's not a big chore.
Okay, so we know that if we want Newsome to go away, the answer to the question, do you want Newsome to be recalled, is yes. I know I keep saying it because I'm trying to overcome the stupid t-shirts and this other stuff they do. All right, now I'm going to ask you guys both the leading question here, because if I look at my ballot, once Newsome is been fired, by the way, these people are employees of ours. Gavin Newsome is an employee of the citizens of the state of California. You're paying his salary. If you don't like what he's doing, which most people don't, fire him. You can do that. It's your opportunity to do that. Do you want Gavin Newsome recalled? Do you want him fired? The answer is yes. All right. Once we've done that and he's gone, then you have this long list of people to pick from as to who you would like to replace him as governor. All right. Here's the leading question, gentlemen. You probably don't like me asking it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. From the standpoint of California gun owners, who's the best candidate?
Well, I'll answer for CRPA. We, along with Gun Owners of California, have had a process of looking at voting records, and we've had a process of having candidates fill out questionnaires. In this recall, several of those people have no voting record, and even though Sam and I did our level best to get them to fill out, to my knowledge, unless something changed since yesterday, I think was the last time I spoke with Sam, and he's shaking his head no. No one's turned them in. So the only thing I can say is CRPA did a polling of its membership, and overwhelmingly they were giving, who's your first and second choice? And the first choice candidate overwhelmingly statewide was Larry Elder. And I can say personally, that's where I voted.
Sam?
Joel, we, as Rick pointed out, we've been doing elections for a very long time. And the questionnaire program that we have is incredibly important because we've learned from being burned. As Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. There are a lot of people out there who talk a good line about supporting the Second Amendment. Well, what does that mean? Well, that's why we send them questionnaires for them to fill it out, to in detail tell us what they mean. And absent that, elected officials, they have voting records. They've voted on gun issues. You know where they stand. It's a proven track record. Now, when somebody doesn't return their questionnaires, we've had times when we've supported somebody, I'm pro-gun, oh yeah, he's good, he's a gun club member, all that, 100 and all that, and then they come and they vote stupid. We lose them on second, and we go, why? And people ask us, didn't you guys know that he wasn't a pure pro-gunner? Well, the way that we know is when we have a questionnaire in hand and we can go, here, just give us your answers on these specific questions. We don't make those questions public. We just grade them and tell them. We know that Kevin Kiley is the highest rated pro-Second Amendment candidate on that list. He's an A+, not only 100% voting record in the state assembly, but a sponsor of pro-gun legislation. We know that Ted Gaines, who was an assemblyman and a senator, has an A rating while he was there. We know that Cox has turned in questionnaires when he was running for governor previously. So we have him on record on where he stands. He's got an A. We sent them out to the top tier candidates. For us to send them out to the Playmate of the Year candidate and some of the other candidates who aren't serious candidates, they somehow raised $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 to get their name on the ballot, but have no level of resources, financial or constituencies. We went to the people that are putting on campaigns and are serious about trying to make an election. With regards to Larry Elder, I've been on his show. I love Larry Elder. He has not responded with a questionnaire. He has pledged fidelity to the Second Amendment. I believe him, but we don't have that questionnaire in place. So the top two in my mind are, if you trust them, Larry Elder, and the top guy on the other side is Kevin Kiley. Those are the ones with the highest rating records of anybody who's running for office. There are other lower candidates who had the Second Amendment on their websites, but when they went to discuss what they meant in details, they showed, oh yeah, but we're okay with 10-day waiting periods, and we're okay with background checks, and we're okay with mental health checks, and we're okay with this and that and the other, and that created problems. So it's going to boil down to a popularity contest, who has the most money to gain access. You have Larry Elder, who's got more than 1 million followers in Southern California on his radio show. You have Kevin Kiley, who successfully ran the lawsuit against King Newsome and his executive powers. And he had statewide mailings that went out under his letterhead. So he also has resources and support. So
I'm going to be totally obnoxious about this and say that I think John Cox is a waste of time. He was a waste of time the last time. He didn't bother to show up and campaign for months, and he cost us a lot because we have a governor that we're trying to recall. I would not support him if he were the only person on the ballot. Actually, that's not true, because
90 other candidates.
A baby Yoda doll would be a far better governor than the one we have now. But I think you guys are right. I don't think we could go wrong with well, I certainly couldn't go wrong with Kevin Kiley. I'm aware of his record as well. I think, truthfully, I don't think we can go wrong with Larry Elder. I'm a little concerned that he hasn't turned his this
if anybody
questionnaire
has
back in,
context,
but they may. So we got a little time. So hopefully so. But now, you mentioned the top three. There, Larry Elder and Kevin Kiley. You named two. Do we know who the top three? Know that third person yet? I don't know.
Well, it really doesn't matter because the drop off is precipitous after that.
Oh, is it?
Elder is ahead by double digits. Last I saw, he was in the 30s. Kevin Kiley was in the 20s, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have a million plus listenership radio show. And then everybody else, including the former mayor of San Diego and Cox and everybody else, they're down in mid to lower single digits. So it's really going to be a two-man race. And that's just the reality, folks. You can call me and argue with me that there are better candidates. There just might be, but the reality is those two are gaining the support and everybody else is kind of an afterthought right now.
Well, as a San Diego, I'm not a San Diego resident. I'm a San Diego County resident, but I own property in San Diego. Our former mayor, to quote a friend of mine from Jersey, forget about it. He'd be a terrible governor. Please don't elect Faulconer. I think personally, I think we're great. We'll work well with either Larry Elder or Kevin Kiley. I'd be thrilled with either one of them in office personally. It's my personal opinion. And it's my show, so I get to say that. The one thing I do want to close out the show by saying is regardless of who you pick on this idiotically long list, on this question up here, do you want Gavin Newsom to be recalled? The answer is a resounding, everyone together.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so please answer yes on question one. Is there anything else we should talk about, guys?
Interesting thing when you brought up that ballot, some people have got ballots that have got names on both sides of the ballot. So some candidates will be on the backside. It could be Kevin Kiley, it could be somebody else. So please,
I haven't got one of those.
The ballot is a different size in different counties. Mm-hmm. So be careful with your ballot. Be sure you look at it and make sure that, if there are candidates on both sides, you know who they are. Just be cautious.
I should probably ask you, we had the problem with the holes punched in the ballots, envelopes, and you mentioned color-coded ballots. Have those problems been resolved, or are we still dealing with them?
They've been addressed, and we're finding out that some of the counties that had color issues are now sending the same color to everybody. And they have been warned. I haven't heard any result from the holes, except a lot of people are spreading the news. When you stick your ballot in the envelope, check to make sure that the portion that shows your vote is not visible through the hole. If you put the ballot in one direction, you can tell. If you put it the other direction, you cannot tell. So
my ballot, so that does have a hole in it. And I did put it in there a couple different ways. And this one you cannot tell. But this is the kind of hole that Sam's talking about. So if you have a ballot with a hole in it, when you put your ballot in, check and make sure that your vote is not visible through the envelope, because then you get some, I'm not picking on the post office here, but it is what it is. It's a government agency that's a union agency, and you never know. You get some postal worker who doesn't like that. And the next thing you know, all right, closing, anything you want to talk about? Or are we all done?
Just say thank you very much for letting us have this opportunity to talk to your listeners and get them out there to vote and know what to do.
Yeah.
I think if Gavin Newsom is fired, we need to have a CRPA, Gun Owners of California, get-together party to celebrate his the demise of his job. But I'll leave that up to you guys. If you have one of those,
I'm all in.
I'll be there.
Me too.
I'll be there.
It'll be. We might have to drag you around the state, because there'll be some people in Northern California that are upset if we don't have a party up there too.
All right, guys. Thank you so very much for taking the time to do this. Rick, go take a nap.
I have 2 more meetings.
I know. I'm not surprised. All right. Thanks, guys. I love you both. Have a great week. And thanks for all your help.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for watching the entire video. You truly are a Second Amendment supporter. I'm very grateful. All right, I promised you if you watched all the way to the end, I'd tell you where I was hiking. I'm in Mission Trails Regional Park. That's in the eastern part of San Diego County. I hike here a lot. This park is enormous. So this is a section that starts right off of Mast and 52. And I'm about 1.5 miles in probably. And as you can see, I'm going down a more wooded area. And as you go through here, you end up walking down the riverbed. Now you can choose to walk through the riverbed when it's dry, like it is this time of year, or you can walk through the area along the side of the riverbed if the river is flowing, which in the wintertime during heavy rains, it generally is. Right now it's dry. So this is a great place to hike. And another place I hike a lot, and I generally do about, by the way, generally do about 5, maybe 6 miles here, and I do it once a week minimum. And then the other place I like to hike a lot is Cowles Mountain, which that's what everybody calls it, but if you want to be honest, the gentleman whose name the mountain has been given was actually Coles, C-O-W-L-E-S, I think is how he spelled it if I remember right. And so the name of the mountain, if you're a San Diegan and you've been here your whole life as I have, is really Coles Mountain, but I've stopped calling it that because people say, what? Because everybody calls it Cowles Mountain, and I suppose that's because it's C-O-W, cow, L-E-S, but it's actually pronounced Coles Mountain. That's in Mission Trails Regional Park as well. And then there's also, by the way, there's a lot of these trails. This is just one, but there's many, many other trails like this you can hike. I know I feel like I'm doing a commercial for Mission Trails Park, but I think it's important if you live in the suburbs or even in the city to get out and enjoy nature a little bit. Because if you don't, then at some point you become sort of, well, you can get a little kooky, honestly, because you've forgotten what it's like to live any place other than with concrete and steel around you everywhere. So, you know, get out and hike a little bit. Pardon me for not looking at the camera. I got to see where my feet are going. And enjoy the area around you. This is one place to do that. The other thing that's in Mission Trails Regional Park is Lake Murray, and you can hike around Lake Murray if you'd like. That's actually more of a paved type of a hike, but it's I think it's about 2 miles if you do it round trip. Very, very popular, and you know, a lot of folks ride their bikes there and that kind of stuff. So that's where I am. This is Mission Trails Regional Park. As you can see, I'm hiking down the the riverbed, if you will, and then I'll come up on a wooded area here in a minute and be walking through that. So I'm about 1.5 miles probably into my hike at this point. I've got at least 3.5 miles to go. I got to lose that COVID-19 I've got around the belly. And I urge you to get out and hike a little bit, get outside and enjoy nature, get out and go shooting, get out of the house, get away from the video machine, and enjoy life. There's a lot of horrible, difficult things happening in our country and around the world right now, but at some point, you got to go out and enjoy life anyway. So I urge you to do that. And certainly we can pray for everything else and do what we can. One thing would be get rid of Gavin Newsome and hopefully get rid of Joe Biden as well, but don't get me started on that. Have a great week. Thank you very much for all of your support. I'm very grateful. And wherever you go, whatever you do, even if you're hiking like I am, stay safe.